When my dad nudged me awake at 2:30 in the morning, I shook him off, grabbed a pillow, stuck it over my head, and immediately fell back asleep. After a few more unsuccessful attempts, I finally rolled out of bed, I tiptoed through the house in my pajamas, and made my way to the backyard where he had set up a blanket in the grass for me and my little sister. Just a moment later, a bright light streaked across the sky. Then another. For hours we watched, first stunned into silence, and then shrieking with joy every time until the sun began to rise and the Perseid meteor shower slowed. I must have been about 10. I can't remember exactly, but what I can remember is how I felt. Bleary-eyed and utterly amazed. It was awesome, in the filled with awe sense of the word, to encounter something as a child that was fully beyond my sense of what the world could be. And since then, I've looked up at the stars whenever I can, hoping to catch a glimpse of something astounding. Last December, after more than 20 years of construction, Americans launched into space a new $10 billion telescope, 21 feet in diameter and, like our precious ark behind me, plated with gold. Meet the James Webb Space Telescope, 100 times more powerful than Hubble. It was sent out 1 million miles from Earth with a mission that is almost incomprehensibly ambitious, to catch sight of the moment when the first stars lit up, seen as light that has been traveling toward us for 13.6 billion years. Now, the photos that have already reached us are, to put it mildly, mind-blowing, even for those of us who do not speak this language of the stars. To bear witness to these images feels like a sacred act, and it puts me right back in my backyard, mouth agape, staring at the sky. This landscape of mountains and valleys speckled with glittering stars is actually the edge of a nearby region called the Carina Nebula. What you are seeing here is the birth of stars, almost 8,000 light years away, something that happened nearly 8,000 years ago, which is a blink compared to this next image. Now, this glorious photo in all its vastness covers a patch of sky approximately the size of a grain of sand if you held it out in your outstretched arm toward the heavens. It's teeming with galaxies. It's the deepest peek we've ever had into deep space. Each of those tiny lights is a galaxy, including a cluster that is known to be more than 4.6 billion years old. And then there's this image. Glorious. No, I'm kidding. It's a slice of chorizo that a French scientist claimed was a James Webb image of a faraway star. But seriously, what is even more amazing than what we've seen from Webb so far is where and when Webb is going. Now, it sounds completely crazy to say out loud, but friends, with this telescope hurtling further and further into deep space in this miracle of technology and time and energy, we may soon be able to see the moment of creation, our origin story. Neil deGrasse Tyson, astrophysicist and author, quite beautifully writes, "We know and can assert without further hesitation that the universe has a beginning, and every one of our body's atoms is traceable to that moment. We are stardust brought to life, empowered by the universe to figure itself out. We are made of the elements created in the fires burning at the hearts of stars. We don't have an independent existence, but are simply one element in this beautiful universe." Ugh, that line gives me chills, to know that you and I and all of us are literally made of this precious and gorgeous life-giving dust, that we're all connected, all unified, all nothing and everything all at once. It reminds me of the story of a Hasidic rabbi who taught his students that they should carry 2 slips of paper in their pockets all the time. In their right pocket, it would read, "The world was created for my sake," and in the left, "I am but dust and ashes." And we told them that both of the slips were there for them to use. If they needed to feel uplifted, inspired, encouraged, they would reach for the right. And if they were feeling high and mighty and needed to be brought back down to earth, they would reach for the left. And when I think about the immensity of space and time, when I look at these pictures or call up that memory of that meteor shower, I need to hold both slips in my hand at the same time, to immerse myself in the grandeur of this universe, and also to sit with the knowledge that I am a tiny, insignificant speck of dust. To hold both slips is to sit with my humanity and try to figure out how to live a life of meaning, a life of fullness, knowing what we know and knowing what we don't. Looking at these images, marveling at the near unbearable beauty and mystery of our existence, I cannot believe how lucky we are to have a place in it, to be here, experiencing and feeling and seeing and touching on our little blue planet, even for a moment. The 20th century rabbi and theologian Abraham Joshua Heschel often wrote about radical amazement, that sense of wow about the world, as the root of all spirituality. It's the kind of thing that people often experience in nature. For example, when they hike up a mountain, or watch a spectacular sunset on the lake, or, bear witness to a newly forming star system from 8,000 years ago on giant screens in their sanctuaries. But it's not only big stuff like that. It's easy to feel wonder when you're looking down at Niagara Falls. Heschel taught that the essence of religion is about bringing that sense of awe into the little things that we often take for granted or consider part of the background of our lives. This includes not only flowers from Trader Joe's on a Sunday morning, or the taste of melting ice cream in our mouths, or a warm donut from the cider mill, but also the things we generally don't even think of as pleasures, like feeling the warm, soapy water on our hands as we wash the dishes in the sink. And Rabbi Danya Ruttenberg tells a story of her child's experience with radical amazement. The other day, she writes, kind of by accident, my 1-year-old figured out how to drink from a straw. He put his mouth on the tube attached to the cup in his hand and started sucking, recreationally, it seems. I don't think he had any expectations that something interesting would happen. His face, as cold milk pooled into his mouth, registered shock, surprise, delight, and dare I say it, wonder. Watching kids learn how things work down here on Earth is, as every parent knows, hilarious, amazing, and even inspiring. Seeing their excitement when they pet a puppy, or eat a cupcake, or eat a lemon slice, or just find a good stick on the sidewalk can be magical for a lot of reasons, including the fact that they remind us how to encounter the world fresh ourselves. Now, obviously, radical amazement isn't just for kids, although they are truly natural masters. It takes practice to regain that wonder, that wowness, to as much of our everyday lives as we can, to relish in that feeling of warm water running over our fingers, to be astonished when we see a praying mantis, not to mention when one visits our Yom Kippur outdoor services like last year. And finding these opportunities for amazement isn't just good for our spirituality. Psychologist Dr. Keltner, the founding director of the Greater Good Science Center at UCLA, has spent years studying the beneficial effects of awe on our physical, mental, and emotional well-being. He writes, "It makes us curious rather than judgmental. It makes us collaborative. It makes us humble, sharing, and altruistic. It quiets our egos so that we're not thinking about ourselves so much. It calms the brain and reduces inflammation. In other words," he said, "don't underestimate the power of goosebumps." In his study, he found that awe, more than emotions like pride or amusement, leads people to cooperate and share resources and sacrifice for others, all of which are requirements for our collective life. And they help explain the link between awe and living. In the presence of vast things, it calls for a more modest, less narcissistic self, which makes us better people. And well, we'd all like to be better people, right? Today is Rosh Hashanah. We're here celebrating this miracle of creation inspired by the music and the ritual and the ark and the words. And we're also inspired by this sacred community that fills our pews and is watching online. And really, what is inspiration if not awe? This feeling of connection to our tradition, to each other, to God, this knowledge that we really are part of something greater than ourselves. We cycle through the year, just specks of dust aligned with the phase of the moon. And we return here again and again and again, drawn in by the comforting warmth of our Jewish tradition. It keeps us tethered, mindful, present. No matter what is pushing us or pulling us, the figurative asteroids that throw us out of alignment, we are back here yet again, craving this feeling. We are asked today to start the exciting work of beginning anew. These days that are very aptly named the 10 days of awe. And it's time now for us to consider how to bring more awe into our lives, more radical amazement, how we can train ourselves to get up in the morning and look at the world in a way that takes nothing for granted. Judaism gives us a roadmap. First, go outside. Remember our Friday night prayer, "May it be my custom to go outdoors each day among the trees and grass, among all growing things." This week, taking my own advice, I dragged my kids out on an autumn hike, and they grumbled, very annoyed to have to give up an hour of their precious free time. But after scrambling over rocks and kicking leaves and counting turtles, after watching herons stalk their prey, one of them turned to me and said, "I did not want to come, but I guess I actually did." Sometimes we just need a nudge to walk out our front door and be amazed. Next, take a breath. For so many of us, pressing the pause button to make room for awe will take some adjustment. I think about all the times I've yelled at my kids to get in the car when they were, say, glued to the asphalt, staring at a wildflower growing through a crack. But when you ask parents to think of their favorite parenting experiences, they often speak about quiet moments of awe, like wandering through a park, watching fireworks on a hill past everybody's bedtime, snuggling together on the couch during a thunderstorm. It's why we need Shabbat and days like this to remind us. And finally, as Jews, we have trained for this. We are taught to be mindful of the everyday miracles that make up our lives. When we offer a blessing before we take a bite of bread, before we taste a piece of ripened fruit, when we mark sacred time by lighting our candles or blessing our children, when we see a rainbow or a bright bolt of lightning or hear good news or spend time with a friend, we offer blessings. In fact, our rabbis teach that we should be offering 100 blessings every day. But don't worry. The Mishnah gives us explicit permission to make up our own blessings using ordinary language, because the point isn't to say the right words. The point is to notice and appreciate, to let ourselves be overcome with gratitude, to fill our days with wow. In Heschel's words, the beginning of happiness lies in understanding that life without wonder is simply not worth living. We don't need telescopes or images of the Big Bang or a meteor shower to feel a sense of awe. We just have to open our eyes and open our hearts and see and notice and practice. We can feel moved by this, but also by this. Just look at this incredible pattern, one that's found in the petals of a rose, in our own inner ear, in pine cones, even in our DNA. We can be moved by this in our own backyard, but also by this. These next 10 days and into this fresh new year, let's shake off our complacency, our habit of walking through this world in a fog. We are only here for a blink. We're only stardust and ashes after all. But this incredible, magical, beautiful, and challenging world was created just for us. How lucky are we to be here? I'd like to end with a prayer taken straight from our gates of repentance. It's one that passed through my mind when I first saw the James Webb images, and one that I will try to remember as warm, soapy water runs over my hands next time I'm doing the dishes after a long day of work. Days pass, and the years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. God, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when the lightning of your presence illuminates the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see wherever we gaze that the bush burns unconsumed. And we, clay, touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we did not know it. Today and into the future, let's count our blessings, great and small. May 5783 be an awesome year, filled with wonder and meaning and depth and life. As together we say, Amen.